Amos, thank you so very, very much. And we'll hear more tomorrow in the conversation between Jacques and Pierre and Amos about their extraordinary collaboration. Many, many thanks also to Jean Meuron, with whom we had many conversations over the last couple of months. Actually, the dialogue with Jacques and Pierre has been very intense, thinking about this topic of memory. And one of the things, as Julia Peyton-Jones said in the introduction this morning, which is very important with this pavilion, is all these different layers of memory. But it is also memory not only through experiencing a building space, but it's also tactile memory, and this very strong presence of the material, cork, the dominating material inside the pavilion, having this very, very strong smell. And that's a conversation about sense, about olfactory dimensions of architecture, which we've had for a long time with Jacques and Pierre. They've had for a long time also this project, partially now realized, to actually develop their own perfume. So we thought it would be wonderful to bring here Jacques together with Sissel Tolaas. Sissel will make a presentation, and then Jacques will join us for a conversation. Sissel is based in Berlin. She studied mathematics, chemical science, languages, and also visual art, and has been focusing for many, many years on the topic of smell and language, and communication. Actually, since 1990, it's her main topic. She's also established a smell research lab in Berlin, and that's not only a lab for the production of smells and scents, but it's also an extraordinary collection. It's an archive. Sissel once said, "I collected smells instead of writing a diary." So that has very, very much to do with memory. Sissel will be talking about smell and memory, and Jacques will then join us for a conversation on sensory memory. A very, very warm welcome to Sissel Tolaas.
I also brought some smells, of course, which I'm going to trigger Herzog's nose afterwards. Anyway, first I'm going to introduce you to my world of smells. Oh, I thought I had a computer in front of me. Anyway, yes, smell and memory are very strong links. In two synapses, you're triggering the memory that are stored in your subconsciousness. We are breathing up to 24,000 times a day. We move 12,7 cubic meter air. Every breath we do, we inhale smell molecules. Information about our surrounding, full time, all the time. Even when we sleep, we smell. Our kidneys smell, our skin smell, etc., etc. So, since 1990, I decided to trigger this amazing software called Nose on my body for the purpose to see if it can one day maybe have the same function, or in combination with eyes, I understand where I live and what I do in a more proper and fundamental way. So I literally put my nose into everything, so to say, my life as a dog. So here I'm smelling, and it was all done analog. I had no clue about there existed an industry out there called detergent, soap, whatever. I'm born in Norway, and we grew up with pretty smell-neutral circumstances. Anyway, so I collected all the smells, pretty analog, sourcing and sampling the smells, and built up this huge archive consisting of 7,000 smells. The purpose of this archive was to see, can I render all these smells? Can I start to relate to smell intellectually rather than emotionally? Is it possible to communicate around smell? And all these smells are sources, are real smells that I picked up. Instead of writing a diary, I picked up a smell. All the boxes have necessary information so that later in life I can go back and source exactly that smell and know exactly why I choose this as representing what time and geography in my life. Since 2004, the industry knocked on my door and said, listen, we better start work with you, otherwise you start work against us. So the biggest provider of smell and taste molecule in the world, IFF ENC, opened their door to my disposal. I started to get access to amazing knowledge. This is my camera for the invisible. This camera primarily collects invisibility. So it collects, in this case, for the purpose industry to replicate smells of nature, to make a synthetic version purpose sell quick and efficient. So this is my lab consisting of 2.5 chemical components with what I replicate smells in reality for different purposes. So here I'm reproducing. I have done city smellscapes, mapping cities from the perspective of the nose for several years. So these are the cities I have literally put my nose into and are still putting my nose into. The way I do this is walking into the different areas, identifying the neighborhoods with my own nose, which is anyway the most amazing sensor. All technology cannot be compared what the nose itself can do. So I identify sites with my own nose. This is Missouri River. I just finished a huge project in Detroit and Kansas City, Kansas and Missouri, which got on display last month. So I literally put my nose into all what I can find that give off smell and reassuring that these smells are there all the time as part of these surroundings. And not just a smell for a second, but are really part of the identity of the site. And having reassured that this is the case, the way I do it is going back a different time of the day, different time of the year, again and again and again, up to several years. So these are then identification of smells from different parts of the world. If I'm not able to identify or to source the smell, to bring the source to my laboratorium, I go back with this amazing tool, Headspace. The industry gave me a small device that helped me collect volatile smell molecules from what I'm after to replicate. So this is garbage depot in Detroit. What it does is identify the molecules, which I'm after. Here you see the peaks of the molecules, and the next step is the identification of the molecules. I go then back to chemical components and replicate those smells. So these are Cape Town, this is Berlin, and this is how these kind of cityscapes then come on display in different contexts for the purpose to challenge humanity to discover their surrounding beyond the look of it. And by decontextualizing reality, in this case the city, putting the city, hardcore neighborhoods, into a context of a museum or university or you name it, I say it, you challenge people to get curious, to get out there, activate their noses for different purposes than just breathing in and out. So I quickly go through, this is East Berlin, Southeast, West Berlin, North Berlin, Northwest, Northeast, West-South, North-South, East-West, North-South, East-West. This is Berlin forever. And the funny thing is, this is Berlin in MoMA last year, an exhibition called Object Beyond, Design Beyond the Look, Design and Interaction. In my case, there's something in a bottle, not just a bottle with some colored liquids. So the problem was, how do I make the audience smell North, East, West, South Berlin? In a museum that primarily there for things to be looked at, it was not so easy. So I had to find a solution. I got young girls to walk around in the museum and let audience get access to the smells of hardcore neighborhoods in Berlin. Unfortunately, the piece got destroyed because one of the audience, he couldn't hold his finger off the bottle, so he collected the upper bottle, causing the two others fell down, and MoMA, New York, was smelling from Reinickendorf, Berlin for months. Of course, they thought I did it. Of course, I did, but of course, I didn't tell them. Anyway, so this is Mexico City, which I got an award at Harvard GSD for developing a project about awareness and pollution. And what I do is I track down, these are the presentation at Harvard. And it's very much about trying to make humanity get into the city, identify the smells, even if it's only in a playful way, but give an attempt to articulate some words towards the smell. And I developed several methodologies for that kind of purpose. So this is 2,100 smell molecules from Mexico City for the purpose to make humanity understand that these smells are around them and maybe them themselves caused it. So this is a silent movie showing the noses smelling pollution. And when you learn, when you get information through the nose, you never forget it. It's there forever. The first time you smell a smell is the essential moment. That's the source of that smell for the rest of your life. So the earlier you can influence humanity to not only radically say bad and good, but to articulate and maybe understand what smells consist of. This is my pollution. These are kids playing with molecules from pollution, trying to understand beyond the danger of image on TV. So these kids are smelling pollution, decomposed pollution, articulating and understanding for the purpose maybe one day doing something about it. And this kind of information, these kind of smells remain in these kids' memory forever. And these moments they can recall later in life and understand that not just is something negative, etc. So here I do a lot of city tours with children. This is in the Midwest of the US, finally getting people away from the car, looking for smells, mapping the city together with children, because I decided to work with kids because the older you are, the more prejudices you have in life towards smell. And it's important to go beyond the prejudices. And the only way to do that is influence early in life. So here I do a lot of workshops with hardcore smell from reality, training tolerance. I go quickly through because I'm running out of time, I guess. Anyway, so this is one of my main projects, probably a lot of people know about. It was commissioned by MIT in 2006 to do a project about new technology and the senses. I catched smell of phobic men that suffer from serious phobia. This was during the Bush government, with all the notion of terrorism and paranoia in the US. This is reality. This is really a reality. This is my reality. So I replicated, I made a small device that collected the sweats of men that suffer from serious fear. I replicated the sweats, put it into a nanotechnology that enable. These are the walls with invisible portraits. So you touch the skin of the wall, you release the body sweat of a person. So the wall become a metaphor for the skin. And there was a woman coming up to guy number 21, I think, touching the wall every morning on the way to work and say, oh, this reminds me of whatever in her life, again and again and again. And in the end, she started to kiss the wall with different lipstick every morning. I was like, oh my God. And MIT said, Sissel, can we preserve this wall forever? I said, yes, you will anyway. So they called me back a couple of months ago. I said, Sissel, by the way, we were drilling a hole in the wall, and guy number 10 said, hello. I said, yes, because he will be there forever. It's invisible graffiti. Anyway, so these technologies stay in the wall forever. You can paint over it, pretend it's not there, but there are layers of skin of that wall, which I have made my, like a dog, marks on. Yeah, so this is Beijing, the Olympics. So this is how I then, I rushed through a little bit, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. All about language, science festival in New York. I got the company IFF out on the street in Washington Park. I made a workshop for children, 3,000 children, presenting them to neighborhood smells and asked them to let the parents stay at home, because I wanted to see how much the prejudices from the parents influence the kids in terms of navigating and sitting after smell. So the kids are smelling Chinatown, and does it look awful? No, it doesn't. So all these kids were like, oh, the more horrible the smell were, the more the kids had fun. And we had 3,000 kids from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and we become an institution. Every World Science Festival in Washington Park, we have this workshop, and it's just incredible. So here, another way of learning tool for children, I developed several smell molecules for the purpose to learn quicker. As we know, smell and memory is very connected. So I have a matter molecule, a biology molecule, etc., etc. So the kids are learning in the context of an abstract smell molecule. Non-referential is very essential, because if you smell of an apple, you will think of an apple. These molecules have no references. I give them meaning. So whenever the kids are smelling these molecules again, they think mud. So I try to see, can they learn more? Can I improve them learning skills? Can I improve their memory of what they just learned? So these are small attempts to put smell back to society in a different way than the industry till now have been doing. Deodorizing, camouflaging, and cleaning up. Instead of doing that, I try to use it purpose communication. So here, I track down empty buildings with Columbia University, the Department of Preservation, and sample behind the wallpapers, replicate the smell, put it back where I found them. You walk through empty buildings, you can smell activities performed, what kind of habits people have been doing for years back. And this is amazing, and people walking through is like, but what's going on here? Nothing. Yeah, but then they come back and find out there's a dimension beyond the look of it. So the last thing I'm going to show you is the most difficult project I ever did, because always when I work, I need a source to collect the smell. I don't pretend. I work as precise as possible to replicate every molecule. I mean, having said that, there are more molecules in reality than I have chemistry to do it. But here, I had nothing else than history book and army people. So I made a smell for the German Army Museum. Daniel Liebeskill did his intervention through architecture. And this is my smell position. The German government came to my lab, smelled the smell, and went immediately to the toilet. So they said, but this is devastating. I said, yes, but what you ask for? You ask for smell of roses, maybe? But, you know, they didn't believe I was able to do such a hardcore, realistic smell. Even I've never been in a situation. Anyway, so as a solution, we put a bucket next to the door, so in case you, and the bucket is more important, become more important than the actual smell. Thank you very much. But, Mr. Herzog, I have a surprise for you. I know you're good, you are a fine wine taster. I'm not going to test you if you're a fine architecture material tester. So I brought, actually, first time in my life visited a pavilion today, yeah? But I got a material sent from Serpentine, and I tried to reproduce the smell of it, so that after you remove your pavilion, the smell of it can last forever. And you can get it reproduced endlessly. So let's see. Are you curious? Maybe it's better than your pavilion. Oh, dangerous. So I also was asked to give to people. Okay, well, it's a little bit wet. Hans-Ulrich. Somebody else wants to smell with us. I think it's about time we do some action here to keep people a little bit awake. More? It's the first step. If I had time and a little bit more money, I would come here with my tools. I'd be here. I would camp in the park, and I would collect every morning, every dinner, and midday. I'm sorry, we're all tired, so am I. And, woo! Shocking.
It's obviously more like the early days of the pavilion.
Yes,
now.
but that's all I had at my disposal. Yeah. I had a brick, but then I have a lot of fantasy. Yeah. So I put some human beings into that pavilion, and I also dig up a little bit more of the earth. So maybe you want to smell how it could potentially smell like. Oops, it will smell like the pavilion all over.
You add some sweat to this.
Yes, sir. Bravo! Woo! Somebody else wants to smell a pavilion with human beings inside. Come on.
More sweat.
More sweat. Yeah. See, it's just a beginning. Okay. So this is the pavilion during the Summer Olympics.
Do you know where the smell of cork comes from?
Yes, the smell.
Yeah.
It's because of the burning, because of Because cork smell does smell completely different. Yes.
And it evaporates totally.
Yes.
It's hardly visible or smellable anymore.
So this one here is with a little bit more earth. I went a little bit down direction China.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Good.
Wow.
So here we are going even deeper, and maybe we find some other ruins down there.
Yeah.
This is more earthy, wet.
That's some soccer field, huh?
But it's more wet.
Yeah,
You smell the
very earthy. Yeah, it's good.
So number 7, this one is the pavilion underneath the pavilion. That's what's remain when we move. Okay. Okay. I have a lot more, but I think this is enough for the moment.
Sissel, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Woo!
Jacques, I wanted to ask you to tell us maybe a little bit more about your interest in perfumes. In a conversation you had with Philipp Ursprung already in 2002.
But perfume is something else. It's smells.
But it started with the interest in perfume,
yeah.
but then with the pavilion, of course, also smell. You said that you were very interested in both perfume and smell because of the memory, which is stored with the scent, that interests you about it. That whole idea of memory. So I was kind of wondering how this started, and if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your interest, because we wanted at some moment to explore this really further, so we thought it would be good that you and Sissel meet.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I can answer to this whole thing. I think this presentation was very impressive. Our interest in this thing is rather smell than perfume, even if perfume is the one product that smells comes across in our society. I think basically we should rather clean our world from all these smells that is all around. Whenever you go to a place in a hotel, there is so much smell, and it's disgusting, actually. And but yes, we have been very interested in smell early on. Also, Pierre and I, as architects, and we always found it important that architecture is not something visual primarily, but it's one of the old disciplines. It's very archaic in this, that it asks for the involvement of you as a whole person, which means that you have all your senses, and it's not only visual, but is of course also olfactory and tactile and all other senses. And that's basically what we are interested in and what we want to stress. So automatically smell comes in. And in this pavilion we've used cork, which obviously has a very strong smell side, but everything has a smell, and I think it's important that we involve that in our daily lives and also in education. And I think I would rather have my children or my students smell whatever is around rather than any artificial product or so. And I think it's very important that this survives as an element of our culture, because it makes us human beings different from other beings, that we combine all these senses. That's all I have to say. It makes our perception more critical and also more controversial and more complex. And I think that's what also relates the whole thing to art and other issues. We talk about all these things that make life more complex and also more critical towards transformations that are being brought to us from upside down rather than from downside up. And I think you can, of course, get children be used to pollution and bad smell, but I think only as an act of revolution in saying that, hey, there is something also interesting in it, rather than saying that you should get used to this shit, because that's how the future will be. And the same is, of course, with food and with, you mentioned wine. Of course, we are interested in wine because I love wine, and I think is So wine is like architecture. It only survives if there is a clientele.
If it's old enough.
Yeah, and if there are people who want it, who like it, you know, because you could live in other places than architecture places. You could drink other things than wine. And we have done project for wine. For a bodega for Dominus with one of the great winemakers, and he tells us amazingly interesting things that would be very interesting for you also, Sissel, that doing wines in different parts of the world appeal to totally different taste issues. People who grow up in America have a totally different taste, being used to very early on to very sharp drinks, more than in Europe still, like orange or orange juice or Coca-Cola and other drinks, that the wines need to be much more powerful, you know, and that initiates a totally different culture.
But the same with the issue of deodorization, you know, like you have extreme, like deodorants, double much smelling in the US than you have in Europe, because you're born with one in your, you know, it's like
everything
part of your
exaggerated.
Nursery. Like deodorant is
everything is bigger
next to the mother milk. Yeah.
But I mean that's okay. But I think it's interesting that if you return or you reverse the question, I think it's interesting to take smell or visual issues or other issues to then understand how a culture is function and is built up and is being transforming itself. That's why I think it's interesting for the cultural side of our society.
Like when I did my research in the Midwest, in Kansas and Missouri, you know, just the step to get somebody out on the street, to leave their cars at home and walk in the city was like unbelievable, you know. But by doing it through, you know, challenging them to be like children, running around looking for smells, it's just something happened, you know? Off they went. And,
Jacques, how did this all kind of enter your experiment with the scent? Because you once showed me this little prototype, which was, I think it was an edition. It wasn't really mass-produced, it was an edition. And we never really spoke about what were the ingredients of and how you experimented with it.
We did a perfume. We started this about 10 years ago. We wanted to do that as a statement that an architect should rather do perfumes than fashion designers, because I think architecture is very much related to smell. So perfume is the industrial form of smell, or the cultural form of smell that we know, besides other things like wine that we couldn't do. And that is the reason. And to commercialize a perfume as an architect is a bit of a stupid idea, but we did it, and it still exists and is, as Sissel presented, it's dedicated to a city. In this case, it was Rotterdam, because that's where we launched the perfume as a result, as an object that we produced for the show. But in fact, we developed it in Basel, and Rotterdam and Basel are both located on the Rhine, so it has very strong river sense. And of course, you would say the river is different in Basel than in Rotterdam. But
how did you select?
We have put in molecules that are mindful of very unpleasant
But you didn't
smell.
copy.
We copied. We spoke with the perfume maker, and he produced all these ingredients, and we tasted them individually. That was amazingly interesting, including also sperm. And the women on the table didn't smell the sperm, couldn't, and the men could. And that's also something, there's a mystery, nobody could ever tell me why. We included dog shit, we included piss, we included many things that are in a river, you know, in a city. But the outcome is very pleasant, I would say. It's very pleasant. I think it's...
Yeah, but that's,
We will, this is not a commercial
Are you sure?
presentation.
Coty, I think it's a Coty.
But I mean, those are all things that are very familiar to you, but for us they weren't. And they were interesting for us to as a statement. But honestly, more I think about it and more I smell perfumes like we all do, more I'm also disgusted because whatever you do, you can't possibly do a perfume anymore. It's so over because, I mean, it's really too many smells. And even the worst of the smells, even those, you know, chicken copies, whatever,
car has a leather smell.
Is not bad in itself, but it's bad because it comes without asking you. Yeah, it's too much, you know.
Everything.
Whereas
but
if
everything
you walk,
has a surplus of a smell that not necessarily come from that smell.
But if anybody, you know, walks in a spring or whatever, and you smell something like a tree or you know, that we are overwhelmed by that.
Exactly.
So that's never too much somehow.
But to be able to do that, you'll need to learn it, because we never learn how to use our noses. We learn how to read, we learn how to see, but where? Which school? We have a curriculum? Nose. And we can be without looking and hearing, but the moment we stop breathing, we are dead. Yeah? And every breath you do, you inhale all this amazing information, and it just stored in the subconsciousness. We use maximum 20% of it. So all my workshop with children is about this, you know, like, come on, ask for nose jobs, you know. Like,
and you've both spoken a lot about memory in previous, you know, conversations in relation to scent. Jacques, you once said smells and scents can evoke experiences and images of the past, almost like photographs. We had earlier here today Monsieur Tadier, who is the, you know, one of the world's greatest experts in Proust, and he was obviously telling us about this epiphany moment with the Madeleine in Proust.
But he was also speaking about taste. Taste is only 5 directions.
But exactly,
thousands.
exactly. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. And Sissel, you talk about the deodorization of the world and that there is a kind of a loss, a forgetting, an amnesia, a memory loss. So I just wanted to maybe, as a last question, ask you if you could talk a little bit about that memory aspect.
Yeah, understanding and memory, and as I said, you know, the first time you smell a smell is the source of that smell for the rest of your life. Yeah, so it remains in your subconsciousness forever. You know, and whenever later in life you smell the same smell, you remember that one. That's why everybody says my childhood, my childhood, my childhood, because those are the first time you smell a smell. And if those moments were positive or negative, that's your relation to that smell forever. You know, so that's also why my courses with kids about tolerance is so important, to get beyond the prejudices. The longer you know you live, the more prejudices you have, and the less you see the importance of smell being there for memorizing, for navigation, for information, etc., etc. So first we have to get rid of the prejudices. Tolerance is the issue. You know, tolerance is number one, and that only starts, you know, with you get it in kindergarten, and get the kids out and use their noses like they use their eyes. You know, I'm sorry, I cannot do more than what I do. But I got the industry on my side. We are doing a big project now in Kuwait, how to improve the public space between your house and the shopping mall. You know, what are the issues of smell? So, I mean, there are lots of jobs to do, and, you know, we don't need more perfume, that's for sure.
I say it a bit differently. I think I'm more interested in a non-directional kind of approach to smell, which is that I actually don't care so much about how it smells. I think it's more important that you become aware of that as your possibility to orient yourself in the world.
Yeah, but you have to learn this.
I think, yeah, of course. Yeah, you have to learn it in that. You have to learn it in that. You train it like other senses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for that, you need tools.
Yeah, you need tools. Yeah, you need tools. You can.
You have an ABC. You have 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but
so you have smell molecules.
But there's smell everywhere. I think we should rather destroy the tools than bring in more and more. You know. And I was thinking of your archive, which is very impressive. I think that looks also beautiful. But in fact, these 6,000 or something is nothing compared to what exists in the world. You know?
This is just a little life.
Somehow it was very mindful of these, and I know that you, Hans-Ulrich, are very interested in these archival obsessions that I also have in different, and somehow is was telling me how limiting this is also, because it makes us be aware of, how...
But I challenge other people to do the same. So a lot of contexts I've been in start to show me the archives of smell.
Could you imagine? In this space, there is 300 people or something, and everybody has a different smell under the arm. So that's already 300 little bottles.
We are doing a project in Cape Town at the moment. And we have in the townships, we have a mobile smell lab. People are donating the smell of their neighborhoods. So we're building up local smell archives. And these labs are moving around the different townships, and they start to show each other their smells. So it's a playful way of
You should
awareness.
teach the children to smell each other. That would
But that's
be a
what I
good start.
do too. You didn't see. I have a lot of slides which I didn't show, but I do that.
And it's actually interesting because when I was reading this morning about Sissel's archive, and then I sort of remembered, Jacques, your interest in archival exhibitions, and in a statement actually you made for the archaeology of the mind, I think it was, you say that your models and experiments of yours and of Pierre with materials are not works of art, but rather a kind of accumulated waste. And I was kind of interested how important these traces of older projects are to your ongoing project, because obviously it ties in with what Daniel Buren said earlier today here when he talked about this idea of architecture within architecture. It ties in with the pavilion here, where you use the previous pavilions.
Yeah, what should I add to this? It obviously ties in Sunday, but it's also using things like, this marathon is dedicated to memory, and I'm not so sure whether memory is what is the most important aspect of that contribution here. The waste one is certainly more relevant even, because somehow it's also an excuse, because sometimes you don't know what to do, and you collect all the existing things, and you reassemble them somehow. And is this memory? I don't know. Certainly memory is involved in this. But I think that we shouldn't forget our Weiwei, who cannot be with us here, who is also very critical, just as I mentioned, about memory, because it's sometimes memory is being used as an excuse or to justify something, that's why, because it appeals to memory that it is good or it is justified or it has a role in our society. And sometimes it's just a decoration or decorative element. In this case, this is a very short history of the pavilion. It's 11 years, and we have certainly seen 11 very interesting pieces of architecture, each of them very recent history. So somehow it's remindful of this, but somehow it's also totally different. And somehow I think that we live so fast and forget things so fast that I'm not so sure whether really memory is so important anymore.
There could not be a more wonderful conclusion. And actually, it's also wonderful that you mentioned Weiwei, because it's an invitation to you all to also, at the very end of today, after the next speakers, of course, because we have very important next speakers to come after the, at the very end of today or tomorrow, to revisit the pavilion, where throughout today and tomorrow you have the quotes Weiwei sending us about memory displayed. Sissel and Jacques, thank you so much. Thank you all very much.